As we're seeing the motorcade, I want to guess in the Little Havana area. This is Publix. Manuel Bojorquez is there following former president's every move. I don't think Little Havana is part of the direction between downtown and the airport. Manny is there. I'm seeing, I believe that's Versailles, which is a very, very popular spot in Little Havana that where political rallies formed in the past. Manny, tell us what you're seeing. Is that Versailles? Am I right, Versailles?
Well, clearly the former president's caravan has stopped right here next to Versailles cafe and restaurant. This was a previously unannounced stop. You can see there's a lot of commotion right now. A lot of Secret Service and press now filtering into the restaurant where we are expecting that the president will greet his supporters. Again, this is just a few minutes away from that federal courthouse that he visited. So what do you do after a long day where you want to go where everybody knows your name?
Cafecito.
And for former President Trump, that would be the heart of Little Havana, the heart of the Cuban American community here, where he is guaranteed to get a very warm and ardent welcome from supporters here. So the caravan just parked next to us. You might be able to see some of the flags off in the distance. These are people who clearly had a heads up that he might be coming here after the indictment or arraignment, I should say. And he is expected possibly to shake hands with some of these supporters out here. So, you know, really when you look at this, it is an attempt by Team Trump to change the tone of the day, to change the narrative, to end on a high note. The last frames of video of the former president coming out of Miami, this eventful day here in South Florida, will be of him and supporters. So this really has more of a feel of a campaign stop. And one of the things that we've been pointing out throughout our coverage is that he's been meeting, yes, with his legal team, but also with the campaign to figure out how to make the best use of this for their 2024 run.
Manny, just want to underscore where you're standing and this restaurant, there's not a candidate who ever comes through South Florida, is certainly in a presidential race, who doesn't stop there. This is clearly designed, as you just pointed out, as maybe the first step in a campaign to address public opinion about what went on today. This looks like someone who's running for something. And in this case, what he may be running for is a change or an attempt to galvanize support.
He's inside Versailles right now. This is the first that we are seeing of former President Donald Trump today. We did not see him as he left Doral, his resort. We did not see him in the court. Now we're seeing him in the manner that he wishes to be seen, campaigning, not facing a criminal prosecution.
And that looks like his aide right in front of him. It's hard to get a sense of the picture, but just in the corner of the shot. So a very interesting scene unfolding here inside what has become a very well-known campaign stop as former President Donald Trump, who is, again, the first president to have been arraigned in American history, is now meeting with a wide variety of supporters and attempting to certainly get pictures out that he wants of somebody who is going to be forceful and display some sense of vigor in contesting and defending himself against the charges, the 37 charges that he just faced today.
And in a way, clearing out what just happened. I mean, we have been covering this moment for it being historic. We did not see him when he was under the control of the court, under the control of the American justice system, when he had to present himself and follow that proceeding as a criminal defendant. He is showing his face now among faith leaders, clearly, among a public that supports him. As many of you know, the Cuban American population in Miami is predominantly Republican for multiple historic reasons. And Versailles, this is a place that, as Jim said, is somewhere where candidates go, where rallies take place, where when the Cuban American community in Miami wants to make a point or protest or support something, they tend to gather in front of Versailles. And so this is the face. Him on top, in a way, is what he wants perhaps, to portray. I do wonder, I want to bring in Manny. Manny, how impromptu was this? We were wondering, why is he leaving Florida, where he's had so much support, where he's facing this proceeding, and going straight to New Jersey to fundraise? Now we're seeing him make a stop that looks like a campaign stop. Did you know this was going to happen? Do you think this was improvised or planned from what you're seeing?
Well, there were certainly rumblings about something like this happening, which is why we left the golf club that he owns in Doral and came here just in case. You know, there was a world where maybe they ran out of time because he does have to get to New Jersey, but it looks like they are making the time. And the supporters here, you won't hear anything about the indictment other than they consider it a witch hunt and a political persecution of the former president. They see it as a way to try to get him to put an obstacle between him and the White House in 2024. And a lot of the signs that we're seeing people carry here, a lot of the flags have 2024 on them. So you can really get a sense here that for the former president's team and his supporters, this is trying to put a completely different spin on the events of the day. You know, we hear a lot about what about Biden? What about Hillary? What about prosecutions of those things? So definitely the talking points that the GOP has been running on when it comes to this indictment is what we're hearing out here. But we're waiting to see how long exactly the former president, will be here, who exactly he will meet with. But again, if you want to try to flip this day on its head, you want to make a campaign rally in a place that you know you will get a very positive response.
That's how you do it. And Manny, you don't have the perspective that we have here because
This is an unbelievable picture
outside.
that we're looking at.
Yes.
Inside, Manny, we're looking not just at Donald Trump, but that seems
his
to be
co-defendant.
Yes.
Walt Nauta is right there.
Serving as his aide, which is how he ended up in the courtroom to begin with today. And now he's serving as his aide at Versailles and getting his, performing his function as a Donald Trump aide.
And they're not walking in as co-defendants hand in hand. It is in what we've seen from Walt Nauta, as we're hearing somebody singing happy birthday. It is not the day, it's not the president's birthday or the former president's birthday today, but we are seeing Walt Nauta right there behind him with that red tie, serving as, yes, an aide next to him. Not sure if this is a statement or if he's still just working with him in the same capacity that he was when these allegations
He's gone from the courthouse to his day job.
To his day job as an aide. And on this, I want to bring back in CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, our apologies for throwing Manny and the former president in there as we were mid-question, but we are ready to hear from you. Scott, tell us what surprised you today. What did you not... Oh, hold on. Again, Scott, apologies. He's talking. We're hearing from former President Donald Trump right now.
And you see where the people are. We love the people. And you see where they are. You see the crowds and everything else. We have a country that is in decline like never before, and we can't let it happen. I'm going to make a little speech tonight in Bedminster, and I hope you're going to be there.
And you start tomorrow.
You're going to be there. You can come too if you want, okay? Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Out of the speech there, but the former president making some remarks, the first that we've heard from him today after offering food from Versailles to everybody. Scott, please tell us what's in your mind after hearing the former president, after seeing him in court.
Yeah, there were so many things that happened today that were similar to the last time we saw Donald Trump in court in the Manhattan courthouse for the local prosecution by Alvin Bragg. He was dressed similarly, suit, red tie, but no expression on his face, kind of hunched over at the table, writing nothing, taking no notes, arms or hands folded, listening to his attorneys, but saying precious little. But there were some things different. In this case, rather than calling the former president Mr. Trump or defendant or Trump, the judge here, Jonathan Goodman, in the federal court in Miami, referred to him as former President Trump multiple times. Rather than a bare-bones, tiny courtroom in Manhattan, today it was in a grand cathedral, an enormous ceremonial courtroom on the 13th floor here at the Ferguson Federal Courthouse. Ornate walls and an ornate building, and for all intents and purposes, this courthouse was shut down today to make space for this proceeding, for all the crowds that gathered, all the media crowds, and the dozens of Trump supporters who were here, too. It was a brief proceeding relative to other court cases, about 45 minutes, but it was also an interrupted proceeding, Lilia and Jim. His co-defendant, Walt Nauta, didn't yet have local counsel of record, a local attorney who was cleared to work here in the Southern District of Florida. So Walt Nauta was not arraigned today. He made an initial appearance. His case will continue in about 2 weeks, still here in Miami, when the arraignment will be continued, potentially, with Nauta here in person. And potentially most striking and relevant politically, there are no restrictions on Donald Trump's travel, despite now being a federal criminal defendant. He can travel domestically. He can travel internationally. No small thing for Donald Trump as he runs to secure the Republican nomination for the White House, seemingly requiring him to travel many parts of America. He can travel at will and didn't have to post any money up front for bond.
All right. So, Scott, let's widen out for a second here. It strikes me that while we can analyze and parse all of the events of today that have to do with this arraignment, obviously, attention now will move to the actual case that the DOJ has put together when it comes to all of the allegations. I guess I want to ask you, since you are steeped in all of the January 6th investigation and all of those cases, as you look at the cases sort of side by side, the investigation DOJ has put together into Mr. Trump's actions at Mar-a-Lago and those that led up to January 6th, compare and contrast for me. What's your sense of the comparison of cases?
Well, same prosecutor, first of all. Jack Smith's overseeing both investigations, the investigation into the documents and the exposure, allegedly, of classified American military and nuclear secrets, and that other investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election, potentially limitless in its breadth and its scope, and still underway in Washington, D.C. Jack Smith, by the way, Jim, was in the front row today, watching today's proceedings in person here in Miami. Legal analysts say this is a much cleaner case because it's more narrow. The goalposts are more narrow here. There's a finite number of accusations over a finite period of time. We don't know the scope and size of any investigation into overturning the 2020 election. There are so many threads there to pull on, including what became of the money raised on baseless election claims. What and who was part of any operation to overturn election results, and what gave rise and who gave rise to the historic and horrific attack on January 6th at the Capitol. We don't know the trajectory of that case. The trajectory of this one wasn't certain, but we knew the time frame, we knew the epicenter. It's those records, it's Mar-a-Lago, and it's Trump himself.
And Scott, real quick, I'm curious because I know that a lot of people had questions before today and were wondering whether or not we were going to learn this today. Will Judge Aileen Cannon stay on the case? Will this continue in Miami? What's next regarding, I guess, the macro view of the case?
Yeah, Lilia, every indication we got today, including the introduction from the judge here, is that this remains Aileen Cannon's case, the federal judge appointed by Donald Trump a few years ago, who sits at the courthouses in Fort Pierce and West Palm Beach, Florida. It's uncertain if the case physically will move there or if Judge Cannon and potentially a jury pool will come down here to Miami, where the courthouse is huge and the security footprint is huge. But this remains her case. If that name rings a bell, Aileen Cannon, it's potentially because she was the Trump-appointed judge who was hearing arguments on the search warrant itself in late 2022 and made a controversial ruling to limit the federal prosecutor's access to those records temporarily, a ruling that was overturned by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. This case remains hers. There's no guarantee it will stay hers permanently, but it is on a glide path towards Judge Aileen Cannon here in West Palm Beach or in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Scott MacFarlane, we appreciate all of your insight. Thank you very much.